Welcome. Now it's time for our top morning headlines. All eyes on the state capitol this morning as Governor Neil Abercrombie delivers his third State of the State address. Abercrombie is expected to speak on everything from early childhood education to the state's continued effort to renewable energy sources to soda. KITV4's Ryan Kalei-Suji joins us live from the state capitol with a preview of some of the governor's initiatives. Good morning, Ryan.
Hey, Mahia, good morning to you. That's right. This is the House of Representatives where the governor will be speaking later this morning and addressing both members of the House and the Senate, speaking about his plans as we enter 2013 and this legislative session. I'm joined this morning by our very own political analyst, Neil Milner. And Neil, what do you think we can expect to hear from the governor this morning?
Well, I think you're going to hear a general idea of what his most important issues are. The interesting thing is whether he's going to pick out the ones that are a bit controversial because they either cost more or they're more long-term, like the early education one or the thing about the infrastructure. There's a whole list of issues that are going to be there. I think what's really important is, as much as the issues, is the kind of tone he sets, because he's still on a learning curve in terms of how much influence he has over the legislature and so on.
And how important is that? Because, you know, he's entering his third year. It's an election season next year. How important is the speech for him and really getting the ball rolling and trying to make some concrete steps forward in this next year?
Well, I think there's two concerns. There's that kind of narrow concern about whether he's going to run again and how he's going to look in the eyes of the public at that time. There's also the sense the governor's position is a really interesting one, and we've seen it the last two governors. When Lingle was governor, people said, well, she's going to have trouble because it's a Democratic legislator, and she went outside and tried to influence public opinion. That worked so-so. He has the same issues, as did Cayetano. A lot of what you have to do as governor is try to set a tone, set an agenda, and do those kinds of things. It's hard to measure, but that's going to be the thing to watch. He hasn't gotten good press over the years that he's been there, so that's part of this.
You know, we've also heard of a potential soda tax, and it's nothing new. We've heard about it. We spoke to Blake O'Shear earlier about it as well. What do you think about the potential of a soda tax or other taxes that may be implemented?
Well, the first thing is that taxes, that's not a good word in this political atmosphere, and we already heard that in some of the leadership from the House and the Senate. I think what's likely to happen with something like a soda tax, which is controversial, is that it'll get lost in the shuffle. I'm not necessarily good at predicting, but if you think of all of the stuff that has to be before the legislature this time, the easiest way to handle something controversial like that is just to let it slide. Again, it may depend how much the governor wants to push it, but even if he pushes it hard, that's by far not a guarantee.
And quickly, one last question. You know, there's been these ongoing contract talks with various unions. How do you think that will impact this speech at all? Will we hear anything about union speeches, about the teachers, about anything like that?
Well, not very much in a direct sort of way, because that's not how bargaining goes. People will listen very carefully to see if some words encourage him and some words don't. I think he's probably going to stay away from that. The education one is special because that one has been going on forever. That's a highly visible issue. But I don't think he's going to use that speech to say much about the public employees.
All right, Neil. Well, thank you so much.
Sure.
Looking forward to hearing what the governor has to say later this morning. Again, that's going to be at 10 o'clock. You can catch that right here on KITV and KITV.com. Back to you, Mahia.
Ryan, you mentioned the soda tax during your interview, and this is something that the governor brought up before, and it just fizzled out, if you could call it that. So what's different this time around?
Well, the differences would be where that money goes to. Of course, we heard earlier from Blake O'Shear and talking about the funds going directly into the general fund for the previous administrations and the previous versions of that bill. This other bill would concentrate more on the early childhood education as well as to combat obesity. So there's a differences in where that funding would go, and I think that's where the clear distinction in the bills would be for this specific soda tax.
All right, and the State of the State address will be carried live right here on KITV4 at 10 o'clock this morning. Thank you, Ryan, for that live report.